piano on The Late Show, the BBC's Late Show, in the early 90s. Well, now with me in the foyer of the Barbican Centre, I've got the composer himself, Philip Glass. Philip, a very warm welcome to you. It's a great pleasure to have you with us. We've got two symphonies of yours on the programme tonight, and obviously symphonic writing is something you've come to quite late. How did you get into the idea of writing symphonies?
Well, I have been writing a lot for orchestra in the context of operas. I guess starting in maybe '79, so there were quite a lot of orchestra music, but written in a theatrical context. And at some point when I was doing these, I began writing orchestra music as well, but more or less like portraits, like a piece called The Canyon and a piece called The Light. And at a certain point I began doing these other larger symphonic works, and I really didn't have anything else to call them. In fact, I had, without intending to, really encountered or address myself to the idea of the tradition of symphonic writing.
You're very much a New York composer, and I mean it's kind of an obvious question, but in the wake of the events of September, I mean what do you feel, if you do at all, the composer's response is to that?
Well, in fact, I was on tour during most of September and October and into November. I was playing pieces like the film Koyaanisqatsi, and in fact, and also the Fifth Symphony was being done around that time. And the funny thing is that those pieces, which were written quite a long time ago, people found extremely moving. And I had the feeling that I had actually already written the music, that the music that addressed these kinds of social issues and in these very dark kinds of moments had in fact been written. We were playing Koyaanisqatsi during the October and November, and there were scenes of the firemen. I don't know if you know the film, but there were scenes of buildings crashing down, and audiences were in tears. I mean, they thought it was really about what was happening now. So, to be truthful, I don't think we can write about things that have happened. I think you write music for things. You write music for something that's going to happen in the future in a funny way. In a funny way, if you try to write things about what happened, then you're manipulating events. But if you're writing about what's in your mind, and if your mind is racing ahead in some odd way, like Godfrey Reggio, who made these films, he had a vision which was very far ahead of his time. When you're working that way, then we can talk about how we articulate events. But when you try to say it afterwards, then it's just, it's too late.
It's interesting talking about your film music, like Koyaanisqatsi, Koyaanisqatsi, and various other pieces, and something you've often said that actually with your music, which is, you know, as it were, not based on film or for theatre or whatever, that you're still nonetheless trying to tell a story. And it's a very interesting point to me, because at the point at which music is the servant of the senses, in other words, that it's the means to a more ultimate end. So if you're working in film, you know, you're telling a story which is partly you but partly the film. When you're writing music for the concert hall, there isn't that extra element. Do you feel there's a strong difference?
Actually, with the music you've heard tonight, or hearing tonight, it is very theatrical, actually. In fact, I really think I'm still, even in the symphony hall, I still feel even more of a theater composer than before. Actually, I think in fact, I haven't defined anything new. I've redefined myself in an old way, in a somewhat new context, but. The piece like the Timpani Concerto, I mean, that's so dramatic. Those two guys, I mean, it's really hard to miss what's going on with that. And I think even with all the violins, all the solos going on in this, I think that's true with the. You can almost make up a story, and people do. People, and I don't know, you know, there are books written in the 19th century telling the stories of the symphonies. and people do make up stories because I think there's something to that.
And it's kind of lovely because you haven't been prescriptive. You haven't said this is the story, so people can make their own.
You make up your own.
Philip, I've got some emails in here, questions from people who are dying to know various things from you. Charlie Hoyt from Bloomington, Indiana, in the US, of course. He says, what's your take on the numerous Philip Glass references that show up in popular culture and your showing of fans on the internet? He says to mention South Park as an example of that.
I find those things hilarious, actually. I don't think people in the UK may know that, but there are a lot of TV things, and they're cartoons and they're jokes. But what it means, I mean, can you imagine it this way? When people make fun of you on that scale, you've really become loved.
An icon, I would say.
No, really, because to enter the culture in such a broad way, it's given to very few people in the field of abstract art music to even be recognized at all. My kids have told me about South Park. It's a kind of a cartoony program.
Yeah, we have it over here.
You
now.
do,
yeah.
I find those things hilariously funny, and I enjoy them tremendously.
So a question here from Deborah Hawkes in London. She says, why do you not want to be known as a minimalist composer anymore? Which I'm sure is a moot question.
Well, I think this timpani concerto pretty much takes care of that, doesn't it?
It does, more or less.
Here's the reason. I think if it deceives you in terms of what you're going to hear. In other words, if it leads you astray, if it sets you up for something that isn't going to happen, and then I think it's doubly poor because very often people will hear what they think they're supposed to hear.
Of course.
So if you tell them, oh, this music is repetitive, then they'll hear repetitive, whether it's there or not. So I think if we're pointed in the wrong direction, then we don't have the possibility of seeing it for what it is.
I mean, I suppose, a key with that is that it seems to me, John Adams is another example of someone who, shall we say, started off from a minimalist style and then has developed and is now no longer a minimalist at all, like you are. So minimalism was almost just a starting point. It's not a language in the same way that, let's say, serialism is.
Well, it was a very good starting point for a whole generation. John's a little bit younger than me, but certainly one of the most talented people of that generation. And I think he escaped the minimalism tag more than I did, but still, I think the idea that that music should have a clarity and emotional resonance, and it should be something that people, can I dare say, enjoy. I mean, that's an idea that in contemporary art, which we expect to see it in theater, we expect to see it in paintings, we expect to see it in writing, but why shouldn't we hear it in music as well?
Philip, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you, very pleased to be here.
And now here is Marion.